Hello everyone and welcome back to my kitchen. For those of you that follow me on TikTok, you guys are familiar with my buttery flour tortillas. That video got almost 18 million views on TikTok and it was under a minute long. So today I wanted to do a step-by-step tutorial on how to make those delicious buttery flavored tortillas. And they really are delicious because they just melt in your mouth. The ingredients we need is 1 stick of butter. It can't be margarine, it has to be real butter. We're gonna use 1/2 cup, which is 1 stick. In the video that I did for TikTok, I also added baking powder, but I find that you really don't need baking powder. With baking powder and without, and they come out just perfectly fine, but you can add it if you want to. And we're also gonna add salt. Now, if you're using salted butter, you can add less salt, but since I'm using unsalted butter, I'm gonna add about 1.5 teaspoons. And the other ingredient that we need is water. For the amount of flour that we're using, we need exactly 1 cup of water. And the main ingredient is flour, of course. This is all-purpose flour. We're gonna use 3 cups of all-purpose flour. All these ingredients you probably already have in your kitchen. So if you wanna make them with me and follow along, pause the video and get your ingredients ready so we can make this together. And now let's get started. First, we're going to open the butter and cut it into smaller pieces to help it melt faster. Then we're going to place it into the cup with the 1 cup of water, and we're going to place it in the microwave for about 1.5 minutes. Depending on the wattage of your microwave, you may have to start out with 30 seconds, then work your way up. You want the water to be nice and hot, but not too hot to where it's going to burn your hand when you're mixing the flour. I put mine in the microwave for exactly 1.5 minutes. And as you can see, the butter is not completely melted, but it will continue to melt while we mix the flour and the salt. We're going to measure exactly 3 cups of all-purpose flour using this adorable kitten measuring cup. 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to mix in the salt. Once the salt is well combined, we're going to begin to add the water and the butter. If this is your first time making it, add it a little bit at a time. Each time I make these, the amount of ingredients I use, they always come out perfect. But that could vary depending on the type of flour you use or the climate that you live in. So if this is your first time making them, add it a little bit at a time. Once you add the remainder of the water and the butter, the dough is going to feel very sticky and you may be tempted to add a little bit more flour. But before you do, make sure to knead for at least 5 to 7 minutes because this dough is naturally sticky and the longer you knead, the more it'll come together. We're going to continue kneading in the bowl until we no longer have any of the dough stuck to the side of the bowl. Then we're going to transfer it to a clean working surface and continue to knead for about 5 more minutes. Now, if it does feel a little sticky after 5 minutes of kneading, sprinkle a small amount of flour at a time until it comes together. And if it's too hard, you can add a little bit of warm water, a tablespoon at a time. As you can see, the flour is no longer sticking to my hand and it's become very flexible and very soft. Once it reaches this point, we're going to shape it into a nice smooth ball of dough and we're going to separate it into equal sized balls of dough. The best way to do this is by taking your index finger and your thumb and squeezing out a small amount. Place it on the tip of your fingertips and alternating with your thumbs, press the dough in towards the middle. Then roll it between both of your hands until you have a nice round like this. Now we're going to set this one aside and we're going to continue with the rest of them until we're all done. With the amount of ingredients and with the size of balls of dough that we're making, we're going to make about 15 to 16 tortillas. But that could vary depending on how big you make your little bolitas. When I used to watch my mom make that, she used to go so fast that I couldn't even pay attention. I'm doing it slow for you guys so you guys can see how I'm doing it. This is by far one of my favorite tortilla recipes because each time I make it, the dough always comes out perfect. And they are also very delicious. And look, somebody else wants to learn how to make tortillas. Hello there, little one. Once we have all of them separated, we're going to take a small amount of vegetable shortening and we're going to rub it in our hand. And we're going to rub each one with a little bit of vegetable shortening before we place them into the bowl. If you don't have vegetable shortening, you can rub a little bit of cooking oil in your hand. This is going to keep them from drying up. And we're going to cover it with the lid for about 30 minutes. If you don't have a lidded bowl like this, you can also place them in a cookie sheet and cover them with plastic wrap. Or you can cover them with a clean kitchen towel too. Our dough has been resting for 30 minutes. Now we're going to begin to prepare the tortillas. I'm going to lightly flour the working surface. Using your hands, lightly flatten it into a 2 to 3 inch round. Lightly dust both sides with a little bit of flour, but not too much. Just enough so it doesn't stick to the surface and the rolling pin. Roll it out, flipping it in between until you have an 8 to 10 inch round. This dough is very flexible and it stretches out very nicely. If this is your first time making them and they're not coming out perfectly round, don't be too discouraged. Just continue making them and that will come with practice and time. I'm going to show you a little trick on how you can straighten it out. Before you remove it from the surface, gently stretch it out to even it out. Or you can also place the tortilla on your hand and stretch out the sides like this. Just be very careful not to pull too hard, otherwise the tortilla can rip. To cook the tortillas, you can cook them on a comal, a pan, but in this case, I'm going to use an electric skillet. I preheat my skillet to 375 degrees. Place the tortilla on the skillet and cook for about 30 seconds on the first side. When you first place the tortilla, you're going to see it's going to start to change color. Then it's going to start to form some light bubbling on the top. I did not fast forward so you can see the exact time of how long it takes to cook the tortilla on the first side. I am really loving making the tortillas on this skillet because I can have it right next to me so I can just reach over and flip the tortilla and continue rolling out the other tortillas. Once you start to see more bubbles like this form, we're going to flip it and we're going to cook for an additional 50 seconds to a minute on the second side. Again, I did not fast forward so you can see the exact time of how long it takes to cook the tortilla. If this is your first time making them and you don't feel comfortable flipping it by hand, go ahead and use a spatula. It's okay to use the spatula. I sometimes have to use the spatula too. I have been making these tortillas for many years, so my hands are used to it. But I will be using a spatula later on, and I'm going to show you exactly what I use it for. Once you flip it, you're going to see larger bubbles begin to form. Now we're going to flip it one more time, and this time it's going to puff up even more. Once the tortilla is nice and puffy, using your hand, press down gently so it continues to puff up. But I don't suggest you do that, especially if it's your first time. I still use a spatula to press down on the tortilla because if you pop one of those bubbles, the hot air in those bubbles is very hot and you definitely don't want to burn your hand. It doesn't have to puff up all the way, just as long as you see nice bubbles like this. Remove it and continue with the rest until you're all done with the rest of the tortillas. And here they are, our buttery flavored tortillas. These come out super soft and delicious. And they're so light, they're almost paper thin. Perfectly because they come out super soft. Look at that. Enjoy them just like this or with your favorite meals. My kids love eating them just by themselves. Look at that, they roll up perfectly. While the tortillas are still warm, place them in a large Ziploc bag. Once they completely cool down, place them in the refrigerator. By doing this, it will keep your tortillas nice and fresh, and it will also keep them from getting hard. And they can last for up to 2 weeks. They also heat up very nicely, just like if they were freshly made.